After Germany invaded Poland on September 1st, 1939, France and Great Britain declared war on Germany. After the Polish surrender, Germany and the Western Allies entered the Phoney War. With the exception of the invasion of Denmark and Norway, there was only a small amount of activity in the West. On May 10, 1940, 8 months after Britain and France declared war on Germany, German troops marched into Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, marking the end of the inactivity and the beginning of the battle for the West. The Dutch army was not a pushover for the Germans, who urgently wanted to end Dutch armed resistance in order to cover this flank. However, despite negotiations, the Dutch army still fought on stubbornly. Between May 10th and the 14th, there were at least 20 air attacks on Rotterdam military targets by the Luftwaffe. Up to 950 civilians were casualties in these initial attacks. In order to quicken the surrender of the Netherlands, the German High Command decided to specifically bomb Rotterdam's civilian targets. On May 14th, approximately 90 Heinkel bombers punished Rotterdam for 13 minutes. This had the effect that the Germans wanted. The Dutch government capitulated the next day, although the royal family and government ministers quickly left for exile in London and abroad. Vice President Harris says, "Any intentional attack or targeting of civilians is a war crime."
Where a powerful country is trying to take over another country, violate its sovereignty, its territorial integrity, for the sake of what? Nothing that is justified or provoked? Absolutely there should be an investigation, and we should all be watching. And I have no question the eyes of the world are on this war and what Russia has done.
The British War Cabinet discussed whether it was right on moral grounds to bomb targets in Germany. Churchill told his colleagues, "We were no longer bound by our previously held scruples as to initiating unrestricted air warfare. The enemy had given us ample justification for retaliation on his country, but the balance of opinion was against him on the following day." When Neville Chamberlain was British Prime Minister, he always objected to bombing civilian targets, but when Winston Churchill got into power, he had no legal objections to it. This shows that Churchill wanted to bomb civilian targets in Germany not because of the German air raids over Britain, but because of the Battle of France much earlier. Ethical restraints which had been imposed at the start of the war became slowly eroded as a result of Britain's decision to initiate unrestricted bombing of targets located in Germany's urban areas. American President Roosevelt advised British Prime Minister Winston Churchill that they should always bomb Germany everywhere, not merely at a few points. FDR said this even though America wasn't at war at that time. This shows what the British were thinking before America got into the war. Basically, they didn't have an ally. The Soviet Union wasn't invaded yet, and they had to figure out how they could win the war. And what they thought is that they could bomb Germany out of the war. Also note that Sir Arthur Harris says that it originated with Winston Churchill. As the war dragged on, the British and Americans started bombing more and more. Dresden, Hamburg, different places. In the Great War, Volume 3, by Winston Churchill, written in 1935, he stated this: "The air opened paths along which death and terror could be carried far behind the lines of the actual enemy, to women, children, the aged, the sick, who in earlier struggles would perforce have been left untouched." This shows his enthusiasm for war and bombing behind the lines. Later on in the war, after seeing the horrific results of the Allied bombings, Churchill seemed to have a self-introspection. He said, "Are we beasts? Are we taking this too far?" So would FDR and Winston Churchill be tried by an international court today for war crimes? This doesn't really discuss Comrade Stalin, because we all know that he would definitely have a problem in any sort of modern era. But those times were different, and no one could touch him at that time. So if you believe that FDR and Winston Churchill would be tried by an international court, please put it in the comments section. I'm interested in hearing about it. Thank you. If you liked the video you just watched, then you may like these two other videos from EmersusTech.